In this video, we will be discussing grip editing solid models. If you'd like to follow along with this video, please open the file grip editing solid models.dwg located in the working files folder as discussed in the working with this dataset video. The grips that display on selected solid models and the types of edits you can make depend upon the solid model you select and how you select it. Let's learn about the grips that are available for the various types of solid models and how to access those grips. Using grips, you can quickly modify solid models in very diverse ways. Each type of model that you create has different grips that you can select and use when editing a model. For instance, we have two solid primitives, and if we go ahead and select them, depending on the solid primitive that was created, the different grips will appear that allow you to reposition and edit the primitive solid in many different ways. For instance, if we select this triangular grip, it allows us to stretch it to a different size. If we pick this square grip, it automatically stretches both sides as well. Note that you can always go into the Properties palette, especially for solid primitives, and change all of the dimensions for that specific solid type. As you can see here, we could change the height, and we could even change the width and the length as well. If we pick this cone solid and go to the Properties palette, you'll see you get the same different types of dimensions as well. So if we change the base radius to a distance of 5 and a top radius of 0, it then becomes a cone. Again, you also have the grips here that allow you to modify those objects, making it much easier to access the edits right within the drawing. Don't forget to press Escape to clear your selection set to then begin to edit additional solid models. Solid models created from 2D profiles will display their grips for defining the actual shape. Now, using these grips, you can change the size and the shape of the solid model. An extrude has grips for its shape and a triangle grip for its height. A revolve has grips for its shape and center point to adjust its radius of revolution, and so on. So each of the different 2D profile methods will have different grips when you select them. For instance, if I were to select this solid, you notice how nothing happens. However, there was an extrusion that was used to create both objects within this composite solid. To access those specific subcomponents, what you do is you hold the Control key down on the keyboard and simply left-click to then select the actual 3D solid. Notice how this was an extrusion from a 2D profile, and if we click again, you'll notice that you can actually see the different grips for each of the different extrusion methods. We can then use those grips to then manipulate the objects as we need to. Verify that polar tracking is turned on, and go ahead and actually using polar tracking, type in 0.5, and notice how the solid model is automatically updated by simply changing that actual grip. Pretty cool. For composite models that contain a history, however, you can access the consumed solids and their corresponding grips by pressing Ctrl again and clicking the face or consumed solid model. For instance, if we go ahead and navigate to this solid model here, hold the Control key down and select this cylinder object, you'll notice that this, of course, is a cylinder, and all the grips that were used to create this cylinder are available for us to edit. You can modify them, and of course, using dynamic input, you can manipulate them however you need to. Note you can even navigate to the Properties palette and change the properties here as well. Again, press Escape to clear your selection set. Now, solid models that had their history removed will only have the one grip used to be able to just simply change the model's position. In this case, it's at the bottom, and I can simply move it around, and that's basically it. Let's look at some of the additional grips that you can actually manipulate for each part of a 3D solid. So a 3D solid contains three components: the 3D face, the 3D edge, and the 3D point at the connected locations for each of the solid edges. To access any of those parts of the 3D solid, you hold the Control key down on the keyboard and simply click on it. Notice how a grip appears, allowing you to manipulate it based upon that grip. If I now use polar tracking and type in 1, enter, we now have a taper in here. Notice that as you hover over the grip, you'll have some additional multifunctional grip menu options that you can use to manipulate the solid edge of that solid model that you select. Do not forget to press Escape to clear your selection set, because if you don't and make another grip edit, it'll actually edit that grip that you've selected as well. Let's go ahead and select a point over here. If we go ahead and hold the Control key down and hover over the actual location where the point is, you notice a different kind of grip. You can then pick that grip, and simply using polar tracking, let's type in 1, enter, you can manipulate the object in that way as well. Again, you can also simply hover your mouse over the face of the 3D solid and then pick that grip right there, and you can manipulate the Z height of that actual face. Again, if you have dynamic input turned on, you can also just type a value in and it'll use that value as well. This technique of editing the different components of a 3D solid is especially useful for dynamically editing solid models that did not have a history. So for instance, if I go ahead and control pick this one, notice how you can select the actual face and do some minor manipulation of some sort. You may not be able to get every single manipulation, but in future videos, we will discuss different editing methods to actually edit objects that have no solid history defined.